Ever since the PC displayed text to a screen, we've been adventuring. From the early text-based adventures of Zork and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and Colossal Cave Adventure, to the simplistic art of the original King's Quest, developers were using the PC to not only create immersive games, but tell incredible stories. But when Apple released the Macintosh in 1984 with an included mouse, things changed forever. Players were no longer tied to finicky text commands. Did the game want me to get that stored or pick it up? Am I supposed to type north or up? And if north, which way was north anyway? Pointing and clicking became the adventure game norm. And that's how it was for me. Only I was pointing and clicking on my NES. My first run-through of Shadowgate, Deja Vu, and Maniac Mansion were done through a controller, not mouse and keyboard. But something about those games completely enthralled me. While I loved Mario and Zelda and Mega Man, those games felt lighter than these. The point-and-click adventures told actual stories, tales I could get wrapped up in and enthralled with more than any Saving the Princess narrative ever could. They felt like an extension of those choose-your-own-adventure books. Go to page 15 to go left through the forest, or go to page 81 to walk through the cave. The idea of shaping my own narrative, even if it wasn't really technically possible, was amazing. And in the space, there were two titans, Sierra and Lucasarts. One was known for the beloved yet punishing King's Quest series, and the other a young upstart who used humor and bright Saturday morning cartoon visuals to bring quirky stories to life. On this episode of A Gamer Looks at 40, we dive into the world of point-and-click adventures, specifically the work of Sierra and Lucasarts. Time to boot up the old 486, get your mouse in hand, and prepare your brain for some seriously crazy leaps of logic, because we're diving into the world of point-and-click adventures. Starting us off on our journey is Adam of the Retro Bygones Gaming Podcast, who sets the table for the conversation, and then my brother Bobby tells us about his earliest and strangest encounters with point-and-click adventures.
When I got my 486DX66 PC, I ended up with tons of games because the local stores still had PC sections, which is absolutely wild. We had a Walmart here that had a bigger PC section than any software store that was in our area. So
wow.
I picked up stuff like Maniac Mansion, Day of the Tentacle, The Secret of Monkey Island, Sam and Max Hit the Road, Full Throttle, Loom, just you name it. And if the game was older, kind of like Secret of Monkey Island and Loom, they were in the bargain section, so I got them for $10.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That's awesome. That's really cool that you had those. Had access to that and the hardware to play it on.
The next phase was like point and click, but point and click only existed as like ports on the NES, right? And
right.
So I started playing games like Shadowgate, which I didn't even know was a port. I didn't know what a port was. Mm-hmm. And it's so crazy to think that like Shadowgate, when I started playing it, existed 10 years prior on Apple IIs. I didn't know any of that. And I played Shadowgate and Deja Vu with a D-pad, which blows my mind.
So weird.
But so weird. You did it because it's the game, and it was a lot of fun. And the story, and unlike games where Mario, you got to like solve the game with like physics and like reactions. This you have to use your mind a different way. And that's why I think what captivated me a little bit about point and click and adventure games like that, where like I can't just jump over the enemy. I have to figure out a way around them with what I have, or I haven't found it yet. And also played into that whole I love exploring in a game. I could sit around walking around the environment. No, I have not played the recent Zelda because I heard that would probably eat my time up pretty bad.
You would never escape.
I would never escape. I know.
Nope.
I know
You would never
myself
leave.
too well. But I would probably enjoy it very much.
Oh, I love it. You love it.
And so it was like Shadowgate, Deja Vu, and even Maniac Mansion on NES. And again, I didn't know what a port was. Again, I didn't even know Maniac Mansion was on a computer.
Mm-hmm.
And then a little side note, we were at our aunt's. Our aunt works for PSE, or worked for PSE&G in Newark. And we visited her office one day. And one of her coworkers had a computer at his desk. And he had a copy of a game called The Colonel's Bequest. And this is a really weird side note, but but the thing is, like, it was probably the first time I saw something like King's Quest, in the fact where you click around, you move the character around, and you have to solve puzzles with inventory puzzles mostly.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even understand any of it. And I didn't even know at the time, like, it was part of a series called, like, the Laura Bow series. I didn't know anything about that. But you play, it's very much like the board game Clue. And you walk around trying to find out how the murder happened. You're Laura Bow, and you go around solving the mystery. And there's a timed element. If you're at the wrong place at the wrong time, you can miss parts of the game that are happening at certain times. So every time you play it, you want to actually try to do different paths. I didn't get that. I didn't get that far at all. Because I was only at her office, and I got to see this game for like 5-10 minutes. And there was a really funny moment when you're in the bathroom. And you can just click to use the shower, and she actually does like take her clothes off from behind. you see like her little pixelated butt. It's it's odd, but it's not meant for kids, I don't think. Then it cuts to a cutscene and it reenacts the scene from Psycho, and then you die. You have to start the game over. You can't use the shower. It's a beginner's trap.
And that's a weird thing, not to get too much into it. We'll talk about it with King's Quest.
Yeah.
Is that it always seemed like the game was punishing you for making mistakes.
Sometimes,
You just went into the shower, turned the water on with no signaling. That was a bad thing, unless you've seen Psycho. and all of a sudden you get murdered from behind.
Yeah, with the Colonel's Bequest. It was kind of funny. I just never seen a game like that where you can walk around like the estate of a mansion and like solve a puzzle. It was so unique, and I didn't quite understand it. If I don't know if you shout out other like YouTubers or anything, but
yeah, of course.
Check out Pushing Up Rose's video on the Colonel's Bequest. She goes through it pretty well, and I think she even has a playthrough with Lazy Gamer reviews. So catching up with that game, watching those videos was like a time capsule I forgot I even had because I only experienced that game for like 10 minutes. So
that's neat. That's cool. Have you played it since? Like found it online?
No, but I'm sure you can. I think GOG has all the Laura Bow games, and I think a lot of pretty much all the Sierra games, if I'm not mistaken, because that was a Sierra game as well.
Just want to send a quick shout out to my loyal patrons, Pete Harney and Ryan Payne of Gamers Week podcast. Both of these amazing humans received this episode on Friday instead of Monday, have access to exclusive polls that help shape the show, and my Tuesday live streams, among other things, as well as the sweet satisfaction of helping a small podcast out. And since they both contribute on the friend tier, they're going to start receiving 2 new podcasts every month. So if you miss the weekly shows, sign up at the friend tier and weekly shows will be yours again. Check out the tiers and rewards at patreon.com/agamerlooks40. And thanks again to Pete and Ryan for their support. Next up, Bobby continues the conversation and steers us toward the world of King's Quest and Sierra games.
And that's what kind of like that connects to King's Quest V. And I didn't know what Sierra was and all that just yet. But I think you borrowed King's Quest V from a friend. Is that right?
Possibly. I don't remember.
Yeah, I think you did. And you brought it home, and I played the heck out of that game. I for some reason, this was later in the series of King's Quest. There's talking, there's voice acting. I think it was on a CD-ROM, but I can't remember. And I never played a game with that had like such an interesting story. And again, it played into all of those things I already liked, which was from Shadowgate and some of those Apple II games, where you have to solve with inventory puzzles. You can't shoot your problems away. You actually have to use your mind. You actually have to really sometimes step away from the game and use your mind, let it digest and come back.
Sure.
And then I don't know. It just really, that kind of interactivity, to interact with the environment in that way, and was unlike Mario. You couldn't just like click on the block and try to like turn it around and stuff. Like
right.
You're not solving that kind. It's not that kind of engine of the game. Mm-hmm. And the story and the environment, it's such a great format to tell a story. I think it really works really well. Unlike a movie, which is passive entertainment, like this is like you're really in it. You kind of you're in the character's eyes, like just interacting with these people. I think a similar comparison would be like role playing games, are the same idea, like a Final Fantasy. But Final Fantasy has the experience points and the grind that I was never to my taste.
Yeah.
I never devote that time. But I could stare at a moon puzzle for a while, but spend that kind of time. Yeah.
It's interesting but it's also interesting because we talked about the storytelling of those games.
Yeah.
I think the other side of it was I always felt pacing suffered.
Sure.
And that's a problem with all video games.
Sure.
RPGs, open world. I always use Fallout 4 as my example for that. You come out of the vault, I gotta find my son, and all of a sudden it's like 2 years later you're building settlements and helping ghouls find their lost loved ones, and you're like, oh yeah, and you lose that narrative thread. Like you use what a film has pacing, and let's move the story along. You
want to get to those plot points because you are engaged, but you're not, your curiosity isn't being rewarded as fast.
Right.
It's a valid criticism. Valid point.
But I think it's just anthemic of what that kind of style game is. Yeah. And I think definitely a point and click adventure would be better of that. Because to your point, than a role playing game, which has the grind, which has the side quests, which have all these things you can do. And definitely better than a lot of open world games. Like, GTAs, you can spend months just doing other stuff and not engaging with the main story.
Not playing with the real story. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. And that's why most people have the most fun just doing that, playing in the sandbox. So
absolutely.
It's an interesting question though. So I've brought this up to a lot of people now. We've talked about PC games and point and click, and people love the Lucasfilm. We'll talk about those as well. We talk about Maniac Mansion. We'll talk about Day of the Tentacle, which we had. But people talk about Sierra not as fondly because, again, there's no signaling to a fail state. Right. So again, I remember playing King's Quest and hating it because I'd walk up to the castle and get an arrow through the head and and you lose, go back to the forest. And I was like, well, I had no idea. Like, what do I use? I have a pail and a broken sword. And those leaps of logic were always really tough for me.
Yes. And as that genre got older, the moon logic puzzles, the term is moon logic. I don't know where that came from, but the example people use a lot is putting a moldy piece of cheese into the wizard orb to beat the game. And
see,
nothing throughout the game suggests that. There's no scroll, there's no script, there's no book. And that's, unfortunately, there were later in the series that became these moon logic puzzles. And the theory was, this is before internet where you can look up just walkthroughs. The theory was, and there's probably a lot of evidence to prove it, but they started implementing more moon logic puzzles into these games so kids can call 900 numbers for the tip line.
Oh, nefarious.
And you can rack up your parents' phone bill. What do I do with this piece of moldy cheese? Oh, I will tell you. After this, after we talk to you for a few minutes and waste your time.
So, where are you from, Sonny?
Yeah, exactly. What operating system do you have? That doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I have cheese in my hand. It could be on any machine. It doesn't matter. Get to the point.
Oh, that's funny. I love that. The idea of
yeah. And like when I first read that conspiracy, I was like, that seems weird. And then you start reading like the evidence for it. You're like, oh yeah, the genre was competing with other genres, and this was a way to make money. And I'm like, darn, that's kind of true. Yeah, it kind of makes sense.
The Sierra Helpline.
Yeah, they had their own helpline. Yes, they did.
Sure. Wow. Okay.
But the tricky part of having inventory puzzles, it's you have to use almost like your real life knowledge. Like I have a butter knife. Well, it spreads butter. But what else can you use a butter knife? Can you jam a door open with that? Can you you actually have to use your own real life.
Yeah.
The more experienced and well-rounded you are, the games become a little bit more, I wouldn't say easier, but you have more in your brain utility.
Yeah, your mental inventory.
Without a doubt, a child doesn't have that kind of experience. This must be insanely frustrating for a child, So it's not meant for kids. It can't be. The deaths are kind of, this is before rating systems, the deaths can be gruesome sometimes depending on the game. Oddly enough, what kept me going playing some of these games, though, they always had creative ways to die. So honestly, I did not feel as punished when the arrow went in my head. I was like, oh wow, that happened. How did that happen? I was more intrigued than annoyed.
Interesting. Okay,
and
that's an interesting point.
I don't know, and we got to give props to Roberta Williams because she's the one who started all these games back in 1980, and what I didn't know is she also made the Colonel's Bequest. She also made all 5 King's Quest games and the games after that, and she pretty much started Sierra. And this very talented computer game developer started literally kind of spearheaded this genre in her own house.
Crazy.
And it's crazy to think she started with the first King's Quest and just kept it going. Now I don't blame her for the Moon Logic puzzles. That might have been like a corporate decision or something later on. I don't know.
Right.
But it's so insane that like they sort of discovered this genre that you don't have to, as far as pacing goes, if you have a more patient gamer or someone who's, I guess, curious, this game can be rewarding in different ways. And they sort of discovered that. And that's what makes it so special. But the deaths actually were, but there are moments in King's Quest V that are punishing as all heck. There is a desert portion in King's Quest V where you have to know which directions left.
Oh,
center.
yes, I remember this.
Yes.
Yeah. Or else you just fall down.
You just you run out of water, or you end up in a mirage drinking sand by accident, or
That's right.
For whatever reason, there are
brutal.
Arabic men who will slice your neck. This is all kinds of dangers out. Or a scorpion will bite you, I think was one of them. The whole point was to get some gem, I think, or some jewel you were looking for. But it's I don't, to this day, I'd have to go back, but I don't remember how you learn the directions. and I think you had to, if you borrowed King's Quest V, you got your friend to like write them down for you somehow.
Oh yeah, or just draw a map, right? Like, three screens this way.
You would actually use pen and paper and do trial by error, and that's a heck of a night back in 1995.
I mean, and not to get too far off the King's Quest path, I think that's very interesting what you're saying about being intrigued as opposed to being frustrated. I was talking with somebody on Saturday who played a lot of these games, and he doesn't like the Sierra games because he feels in the Lucasfilm games, when you fail, you're rewarded with a joke.
Oh yeah.
When in Sierra, you're rewarded with a fail state, with starting over. And that's such an interesting concept, how Lucasfilm purposely, I was reading stuff about it, didn't want that. They didn't want fail states. Like in Maniac Mansion, it's very hard to get stuck.
Yeah.
On my most recent playthrough, I did get stuck and I could not progress because I don't know.
But just real quick, I also owned King's Quest 7. Which probably one of my first CD-ROM games that I owned other than SimCity. SimCity was on discs though. And King's Quest 7 was also, there's not much to say, but that's when the graphics really started to improve. They adopted like a Don Bluth style of a very Disney kind of cartoon look to it, and looked really good for its time. Yeah, and it was just like, I couldn't believe this was like where video games were going, in a good way, in a positive way. And our computer couldn't handle it, by the way. No. It crashed constantly. Those graphics were too good.
No, our computer was not built for that sort of thing.
Nah.
Next up, Adam returns to the show to share some of his Sierra memories. Andrew Craig stops in to drop some serious knowledge. Dare I say poetic knowledge. And Trevor and Jeff from the New Dad Gaming Podcast are going to bridge the gap between Sierra and our next topic of interest. What else were you playing during that time? Even just, were you also playing the Sierra games?
Yeah, I played a little bit of the Sierra games. I didn't play as many of them, so I played like the first 2 Space Quest games, the first Police Quest game. I had a copy of the second Police Quest game, but I never played it. I was into Sierra, but the problem I always had with Sierra is I found a way to die in every game that I had over and over and over again, whether that was King's Quest or, Space Quest, or even the first one I had on the Tandy 1000, the Black Cauldron. There was just so many ways you could die. And it was like it was a death simulator rather than an adventure game to me. And I do like the storylines of them, but I was always so frustrated with how many times I died, especially in something like Space Quest.
My brother liked the King's Quest series. He played a good amount of King's Quest, and I never got it. I don't understand. It's slow. I think he always loves, in any game, he loves pushing at the edges and just what's going to work in this scenario. For me, it was just too esoteric. I needed some signaling to assist or some logic needed to exist in order for me to figure out the puzzles, and I just always bounced off of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah, some of those games just really, and I think that's part of the point and click adventure issue. Did you play a lot of the Sierra games of that era?
No, because I hated the Sierra games because the Sierra games punished you.
Yes.
For not thinking the way that they did. And Sierra would kill you and make you restart the entire game over again for getting something wrong. LucasArts would give you a new joke every time you did something wrong. That's a really good
way of putting it. That's really good. Yes, you're 100% right. They give you a new joke. That's good. But yeah, Day of the Tentacle doesn't do that to you. Sierra games, boy, every turn. And again, you would make a mistake with no knowledge. It's not a fair mistake. If there was no way for me to know that this would, or intuit that this could be a fail state, well, that's it. Well, thanks. Great. My brother liked them. I don't know why. My brother played King's Quest 3, 4, 5. And he was younger.
Some people just like to punish themselves.
I guess.
There's a reason. There's a reason From Software games are so big right now, and it's that some people just really like to punish themselves.
That's basically it. I don't know. Next time when I have him on, I'm probably hopefully next week. I'm going to ask him about N64. I'm going to ask him about Sierra games. Why did you want to play those games? So Full Throttle. That's a game I never played. Never played it. That was one of the first kind of those LucasArts titles. Tell me about your experience with it. What was your time with it?
Do you want to go, Trevor? You want me to?
Yeah, I remember it being like insanely difficult because the real true thing about those games. And I think there's a lot of nostalgia glasses again on those things because honestly, from a gameplay perspective, they sucked.
Yeah,
like they were bad. They were incredibly charming. They were even for the time kind of beautiful. Like that you could play them now, and even with all the pixels, you'd still love them. And I'm talking. I'll throw a couple in here where it's Full Throttle, Adventure Monkey Island.
Yep.
I played this one where you were a pharmacist in the Wild West.
What?
I think it was Lucas. Yeah, like you were a pharmacist, and like there was these puzzle, and their version. Sorry to loop back a little bit before I continue. Their version of the piracy protection is that as part of the gameplay, you being the pharmacist, you had to mix medicine for people, and the only way to get the recipe to get past those parts in the game was within the book. So like that's super clever, but damn, man. Anyway, but like I can remember with Full Throttle, it's just like you rub this wrench on the corner over here, and then you grab the chicken, and if you put that through the basketball hoop, somebody
Yes.
will give you a token that you can then take to,
Right.
And it's just these there's no
There's no
fun-
logic.
logic. That's the
Trevor,
word.
are you referring to Freddie Farkas, Frontier Pharmacist?
Oh, yes.
If that's the
You
name,
are,
that is
okay.
hilarious.
That's a great
That
pull.
was a Sierra game.
That's
so,
a Sierra. Okay.
How does one
It's
acquire
Sierra.
that game? Like, did you ask your parents for this title of a game? Like,
I don't know how it showed up. It just was at my house one day.
I can't. Somebody just threw it on their porch. Like, I don't want this game, and you're like, whoa.
Pharmacist.
It came from your local Walgreens and with your amoxicillin.
Like if you could ever see, like after this recording, like go watch a playthrough of it. Like it is funny. It is clever. Like it's impossibly difficult, but just to this day, like I fondly remember it. It's wonderful, but like the difficulties of these games are just nonsense. Like I don't know, okay. Well, let me put it this way: Jeff, am I just dumb, or were these games insanely difficult?
No, they worked on their own logic. Because I remember with Full Throttle and a lot of like the pixel games, one similar to that is Goblins. And Goblins worked on its own world logic. So in order for you to beat a level, you had to control these goblins that had different abilities, and the world would give you what you needed, but you had to like mix certain things together, but you had no idea how to do it because it didn't make sense. It like acted on their own. Like some writer was like, yeah, they'll never get this. And they put that into the game to like frustrate you. But I remember as a kid, just constantly like almost brute forcing the game forward, just trying everything and anything and just noting. I actually had a notepad and would note down what worked because you couldn't even save those games. You'd have to remember the pattern to get back to where you were.
Oh, that's right.
So like, but I remember like just having an appreciation for the pixel art of it, and like the animations really kind of were shining through in a lot of the stuff. There was one game called, I think it was Adventures of Robin Hood, and I remember you were Robin Hood, and the first level was trying to get through the forest. And I don't think I ever got through the forest, but it was one of those games where I'm like, I love this game, but I never got through the forest. So I
That was another one.
missed all the game.
I couldn't. Those Sierra ones, Robin Hood. God, there's another like
was
I
a
think
bunch.
Thief may have been Thief was like one of the first ones from Sierra. There's like a good 6 to 10 titles at that exact same time, which was just like so fantastic. But again, as to Jeff said, like you were gonna die constantly.
Yeah.
And there's going to be no logic to it. And like now, it would be great to do it now, honestly. If you're ever going to do like a YouTube series or like a Twitch stream thing, it'd be fun now with like just a cheat sheet. So you could actually just actually finish anything you can't figure out.
That's true.
But at the time, like just working with nothing, like just having to brute force it, as Jeff said, ugh, awful games.
See,
awful,
people complain
wonderful
about
games.
Dark Souls. Like these games were the Dark Souls.
Yeah.
These games.
Yeah, the Dark Souls of point and click adventures. Is that what we're gonna do now?
That's right.
It's yeah. So I would actually one second. So yeah, I would say with these is my brother and I had a big conversation on this afternoon actually, and he loves these games. He even loves the Sierra games. He really, really likes it, and his thing is that it's you just have to fall into the game's logic, and where most people when they die in a game, you die because and you get you're not frustrated maybe, but it's a loss. Like you feel like you've failed. It's a failure state, right? So you just kind of have to go back and try again. And Sierra games are famous for failing you. You're constantly failing because you don't know to put the sword in the loaf of bread and feed it to the bird, and the bird's gonna. You don't know that, right? Because how would you? You're a sensible human being. Like that logic, that leap of logic is not a thing,
Right.
But his thing was always, it was rather than cause him to feel like a failure, it caused him to become interested. Like, that's how it rang for him. Like it was intrigue as opposed to failure. Like, ooh, I got that wrong. What did I do wrong? How do I make it right? And he would sit there for half an hour on a puzzle and just work it out. And I used to sit there watching him play Sierra games like King's Quest V. Like, dude, why would you do this to yourself? But he loves those. He loves pointing at another. Talk about Lucasarts when they started doing it properly with like your Day at the Tentacle, of course, which is I think everyone loves Day at the Tentacle and Maniac Mansion. LucasArts games, and this is from another guest of mine from this weekend, and this is almost poetic. He said that when a Lucasfilm game when you fail at a Lucasfilm game, you get a joke. You're rewarded with a joke.
Okay.
When you fail at a Sierra game, you're rewarded with a failure state, with a death. And I'm like, that's so true. And that's why we play like Day of the Tentacle. It doesn't feel as taxing because there is no fail state. And you cannot lose Day of the Tentacle. You can sit there and stare at it for hours and not figure it out. But there is no game over screen in Day of the Tentacle.
Just before I get into Tentacle, it was some Sierra game. I think it was famous for failing you because when you landed on some sort of beach, and apropos of nothing, if you didn't stand in a particular section, look into a hole and dig something out, the whole game was lost. And you wouldn't figure that out until like 6 scenes later.
Oh my God.
And with saves, so you could have so I've now wasted 6 hours. I can't go back. And it's for something that is just so utterly unnecessary, like unintuitive. Arbitrary and unintuitive, for sure.
Next up, we're going to talk about LucasArts. Adam returns to the show to talk about some of his favorite titles, and then Andy from the Cafe BTW podcast and morning Twitch stream. Amazing guy, great personality. You can also find him on Twitter at LoveRetroBTW. He's going to talk about some of the LucasArts titles that really impacted him as a kid. Maniac Mansion is one of those. I adore Maniac Mansion. It sounds like you're a fan too.
Oh, point-and-click adventures are my thing.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to talk about that, especially like the Sierra world and Lucasfilm and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But I recently did an episode of Magecast with a fellow by the name of the Well-Read Mage on Twitter, Moses. And we did an episode on Maniac Mansion. We talked for 2 hours. Just on Maniac Mansion.
There's so much content in it, though. I mean, all the stupid things you can do. You can microwave a hamster. For some reason, you have to lift weights so you can open the garage door. Come on.
I didn't know you could microwave the hamster until this most recent playthrough for that show. I had no idea because I played the Nintendo version.
Oh, yeah.
And even though you can still do it in the NES version, you have to have one of the rockers, either Sid or Razor. And I never ran with those. So I never knew you could do that until I just tried it this time around, not really knowing that. And then I was like, oh my gosh.
I always did
could microwave a
Bernard and
hamster.
Razor.
Yeah, I did Bernard and Michael, I think, for my mains too. My entry point to PC gaming were the Lucasfilm games. You know, all those classics, Maniac Mansion, of course, and Day of the Tentacle. Do you have any recollections of that era at all?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would say The Secret of Monkey Island is probably my top 5 game of all time, I would say. It fits in there. My favorite, though, was the Space Quest series. Was phenomenal. Okay.
Yeah, I never played those. Tell me a bit about that.
Oh, man. So what's interesting about Space Quest, if you ever watch Futurama, there's a character named Zap Brannigan, right? But really, the character of Zap Brannigan was way before that ever started, and his name was Roger Wilco, and he was your main protagonist in Space Quest. And you know what he did? He was a space janitor that like went on adventures, and that was just an amazing story element to a game so early in it's amazing, man.
No, that's super cool. That's really funny. I'm about to look this up now. Space Quest for sure.
So the Space Quest had that campy, funny sci-fi, a little bit making fun of Star Trek and Star Wars. It had all of that humor, and it had the point-and-click adventure style of Maniac Mansion and Monkey Island and stuff like that, and King's Quest and Police Quest. Now, I had fond memories of Police Quest, but it was always a little bit too serious for me. You know, Police Quest was just so like serious.
Yeah, I never played Police Quest either. Heard of it, and I kind of know it's a little bit of its reputation. But I agree with you. I like the silly. That was always Grim Fandango, for example, which
great game. Yeah, and you can also see Sam and Max Hit the Road, which is a classic. Yeah. There's what is it called? Full Throttle. Very good game. Those were great, man. Like there was an era, like a few years, where those games were cranking out and just making great storytelling, and it brought story to the game a little bit more, and it was great, fantastic.
Now, here's a question, though. Do you find that kind of, because again, adventure games, especially at the time of point-and-click adventures, were all about pushing at the edges. You know, just trying every other combination, and sometimes they just don't make logical sense. For example, I really like Grim Fandango. A lot of that game makes no dang sense. I have that game, and I have barely scratched the surface of it. Matter of fact, I think I have just finally got out of the opening sequence, and it's not because I don't enjoy it. It's just because it's one of those things where I collected so many games at one point that it kind of got lost in the fold. So that's definitely one that I haven't finished, but I need to go back and play through. And the flavor of that game is fantastic, but it's just some of the puzzles are completely esoteric and make no sense. And that's when I have a problem with it. And that's why I love Maniac Mansion and Day of the Tentacle. Even if it's esoteric, you can arrive at the solution. And when you find the solution, the response is, if I'd spent 5 more minutes thinking about it, I would have gotten it. No chance. Like, there's no way.
Even the first part of Grim Fandango, when you have to disable the mail machine, is absolutely absurd. I didn't get it at first. I didn't understand it. I spent so much time trying to figure out a way to disable the mail machine and be able to get in there and get what I needed to get, which I think was just was it a pipe?
It's been a while.
It's been a long while.
It's been a while.
But just that opening sequence, it was so difficult.
And now it's time for me to say 10 nice things about 10 nice people who recently followed me on Twitter at @AGamerLooks40. Here we go. Try to do this quick, but I love doing this. It's super fun. First on the list is Mr. G Biz, also known as Smokey G Singleton. Please tell me that's your real name. Really fun person. His pinned tweet states, "No matter how fake intelligent we try to act, we really can't hide our stupid." Profound, Mr. G. Profound. Well done. Next up is Speedrun Hype. He streams and posts up retro game commercials, which is so fun and good. And he also claims to be one of the original TAS variety streamers. TAS, I believe, stands for Tool Assisted Speedrun. Pretty sure that's right. If so, that's amazing, because speedruns are super fun, and tool assisted or not, just whatever. Have fun, break the game, glitch out. It's awesome. Thank you for the follow. Green Thrifter 22. He thrifts, or she thrifts. I apologize, I don't know your gender. They thrift. Awesome. Thrift store finds, retail finds. That's really just a great resource for people who are into that sort of thing, because that's where the gold is. Playlist Wars podcast at Playlist Wars. Check this out. It's a music show. 1 topic, 3 playlists, and we as listener get to decide which is the best. It's a really cool take on music. My other life is in music journalism, so I write about the Austin music scene here in town, and I go to all the South Bys, so this is like right up my street. I'm just like super into this concept, so good on y'all, Playlist Wars. Next up is ST Squiggy, or Seth H. Plays RuneScape. And he's awesome because he followed me and he listened to this show. So all of those things make him an insta-follow. So please do that. Podcast Overhaul. It's an app about podcasts. I think I'm on it. I downloaded it. And it gives you recommendations based on what you like or dislike. So it's a very cool concept. Be sure to download that if you need their app on your phone to listen to podcasts to. Reel of Thieves, I love this. This is a brand new show. There's about 7 episodes out right now. And the host goes through different game adaptations and films and kind of just digs deep into the history of them and kind of just sees how they tick. It's a really, really cool show. And again, there's only 7 episodes. So if you haven't listened to it yet, it's an easy catch up. I drink your podcast. I love these. I love this show. This is super cool. I've already listened to a few episodes already. They go through the movies of a certain year. Right now, they're going through the movies of 2010 and just dissecting them and getting all film dorky about it, which I am into, as one of my other lives was in film criticism. So, that just makes me happy. Scratches an itch. So, and I won't do my Daniel Day-Lewis impersonation again. I won't do that again to you. I promise. I can't help it. And finally, Girl9552 Gamer, or GameGirl36 is the name on the account. She's a retro streamer. she's friendly. She's quiet, according to her stream, but I've checked her out, and she's a lot of fun. She's a really great streamer. Retro videos and games, the usual story. So definitely check her out on Twitch at GameGirl36. Thank you again to all of these fine people for following me at A Gamer Looks at 40 on Twitter. Next up, Andrew returns to the show to talk more Lucasfilm. My brother chimes in, and then Andrew returns to finish us off before we get to the grand finale. Yeah, another one that always came to mind when talking about this is, and this is a game I played for the first time very recently, maybe within the last couple of years, was Grim Fandango. What was your take on Grim Fandango? Did you play that as a kid? Was that part of the bundle? I don't remember.
Yeah, and it drove me crazy.
Yeah, right. Okay, good. Because it drove me crazy as an adult.
The tank controls were just,
yeah,
I couldn't get my head around it.
And I feel like some of the puzzles in that game are just, I mean, for me at least, almost unfair. Like, how am I supposed to deduce this?
It gets obtuse.
Yeah.
In a really odd way. Which, I get it, they kept having to make things harder and harder, and at a certain point it gets so hard to solve these puzzles that they have to go to solutions that there's no reasonable person who would think to do that.
Right. Nor is there.
So I understand why that game has universal love and praise, but it was never my favorite of that group.
And I didn't love it when I played it 2 years ago for the exact same reason, because what happened was I playing it, getting through it, love the experience, the world, the characters, just the concept of it. Just the main setup is, I think, really fun and good. But then you get to these puzzles where I don't know what to do. I look up the answer, and now I'm just looking up the answers, and I'm just following a guide. And after a while, I'm like, I'm not having fun. I'm just reading a guide and just kind of plodding through it. This is not entertaining for me. And I haven't learned the logic of this game. I don't even know if there's logic in this game. So I just jumped out and said, that's enough. I've had enough. But
at a certain point, you may as well just watch a YouTube video.
Right, exactly. I might watch a video of it, which again is, I don't know, just felt like not the same. And I didn't really care that much about the story to really go through that process. So I was like, I'll just, maybe one day I'll pick it up again and give it another try. But I like Grim Fandango. I love the conceit of it, like the idea of it is wonderful. But
Casablanca with Day of the Dead Mexican skeletons. It's wonderful.
Casablanca meets Day of the Dead. Dia de los Muertos. Yeah, that's it. It's fantastic. That's a great description.
Yes.
I just could not. I could not get through the puzzles. I'm like, these are just way too. Just couldn't do it. Again, that might be me just not having the logical brain to step through it, but I had to jump out.
When I played it, because I played the remake too. I didn't play it at the time when it came out. I played the remaster.
Yeah, same.
And they were notably harder than I'd expect. They were a lot of leap of faith puzzles that I needed some help myself.
Yeah. I just got to that point where I was like, this is just not fun. What would you say one of your best remembered games from that era, especially the Lucasfilm stuff?
Oh, the Lucasfilm stuff, without a doubt, it's Sam and Max Hit the Road.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. Why Sam and Max?
That game. Are you familiar with the band They Might Be Giants?
Yeah.
You know how there's like a perfect age for you to find them where they are the most clever people on the planet?
Yep. There's a certain sweet spot. Yeah.
And even as an adult, you still love them, but like there's that age where they're just a little bit smarter than you in a way that makes you go, these guys are geniuses. Yeah. That's what Sam and Max was.
Interesting. That's fun. Now, I've never played it myself, so I'm really curious to hear like your thoughts on it.
Well, it's really an irreverent comedy game. And it set up so many sort of running gags that still carry through in my life, and still jokes that still mean something. Like one of the ones that has always stuck with me the best is there's this whole run where a Bigfoot, they meet a Bigfoot at one point who describes his race as a strange and mysterious occurrence in the world. and Max, this weird psychotic bunny replies, like fruitcake. And then the Bigfoot describes the history of the Bigfoot people, and Max keeps interrupting with the phrase, like fruitcake.
Oh, that's really funny.
And it's written by, the guys at Lucasarts. It was, the Tim Schafers and those kind of guys. So the humor was all just really sharp, fourth wall breaking, weird, funny, clever. It was referencing stuff all over the place. They did Indiana Jones gags. They did Star Wars gags. They did things that nobody would have thought to at that point. And all with that sort of weird, fun look at Middle America. One of the locations is a tar pit. Another is an alligator golf course. Another one is the biggest ball of yarn in the world.
Nice, very nice.
And so, where other adventure games were taking you to these very grand places, this game was taking you to the weird little places in America.
That's cool. I love that concept. That sounds really, really cool. Yeah.
Gas stations were a regular thing in that game, where you had to stop at a different Stuckey's everywhere in the country.
Stuckey's.
and the guy working the counter is the exact same guy, just with different facial hair.
Oh, that's really good. That's pretty sharp. That's like some really sharp, almost satire. That's really interesting.
Well, that's what that game was doing really well. I mean, it's the kind of game where at one point you have to short out a fuse box on a tunnel of love, and the solution is to have Sam pick up Max by his feet, dip him in the water, and then stick his head into the fuse box.
So slapstick, so cartoony.
Well, and Bill Gardner, who does the voice of Goofy, did the voice of Sam.
Okay.
The dog detective.
Right.
And it's just this weird, funny thing. And so I love that. It's always stuck with me. It got to the point where I was doing things like playing through that game as quickly as I could and recording all the audio onto audio cassettes.
That's fun. How fun is that? Just so you can listen to the jokes and listen to the banter.
Yeah.
That's great. That sounds really interesting. Even the idea of that going to lots of gas stations. And by the way, I'm curious if Stuckey's is a reference to Buc-ee's, which is a gas station chain in Texas, where the gas stations are almost mini malls. They are, you could buy everything from, you can buy brisket, you can buy clothing, you can buy camo gear, and there are these obscenely large gas stations. So I'm wondering if that's a reference to Buc-ee's, because if so, that is really sharp and on the nose.
I'm sure it's got to be to some degree.
It's got to be. That's really
they're like
funny.
Snow globes and stuff like that.
Love it. That's so good. I actually might give that a go now. That really sounds fun and grounded. Because a lot of the Lucasfilm stuff was pretty all over the place. Your Day of the Tentacle was, and your Grim Fandango and stuff, which I love those games. I mean, I adore Day of the Tentacle. I want to talk about for a bit, but that just sounds really grounded and fun. And cool. I like that kind of satire.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was very much, I feel, a sister to Day of the Tentacle.
Okay.
As far as humor goes. And if you can buy the idea of a detective dog and his partner, who's a little white rabbit, in a world with Bigfoots and sideshow freaks and country music stars from England,
that's pretty fun.
Then
that just sounds funny. That sounds really good.
But it doesn't break the world with time travel or anything like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. And now it's time to talk about the big one. Day of the Tentacle. Every single person I spoke to about this topic had some sort of sugar to speak about this landmark title. I've played this multiple times on multiple systems in multiple remasters, and it never ceases to amaze me how beautifully tuned this game is. We're going to spend the next 15 minutes saying all sorts of nice things about what might be considered the greatest Lucasfilm game ever made, by a lot of estimations. And people have opinions, and that's cool. But for me, this is just a formative game in my fandom. And I'm super glad I got to talk to a lot of people about this title. To finish off the episode, Adam, then Andrew, then my brother, and then the guys from New Dad Gaming all say all sorts of awesome things about this legendary point-and-click adventure. Which games in that era, in that kind of thing, in that point-and-click adventure, which were ones that you just completely latched onto, that you just dove into feet first and just couldn't let go?
Both Day of the Tentacle and Sam & Max Hit the Road. I still go through once a year and play both of them.
That's cool.
And I think I've played Day of the Tentacle through probably 24 times.
That's awesome.
And Sam & Max at least 6 or 7 times. I still like Sam & Max, but I like the puzzles better in Day of the Tentacle. They make a little more sense, where Sam & Max, you really have to be out of your mind to finish that game without a walkthrough. What I loved about Day of the Tentacle is that you would stumble upon things as you went along, and then you would kind of go back through and be like, well, if I piece that all together, that must mean that this is the next step. Like, why would I need an American flag? Or why would I need to stick a hamster in an ice chest?
Yeah.
And then why is there a quarter stuck to the ceiling? What do I need that?
And it encourages, because I don't believe Data Tentacle has many dead ends. Because Maniac Mansion,
it has no dead ends. It has absolutely no dead ends.
Okay, which is awesome, because again, in Maniac Mansion, you can get stuck. Like, you can make it so you can't finish it.
Die.
You can die. Yep. Right. And Day of the Tentacle, it doesn't seem like it has that, which encourages experimentation. Mm-hmm. Right. You can. All right. There's gum stuck to the ceiling. How do I get it down? Nothing in your inventory makes sense. All right. Let me go up. Oh wait, there's that room. Oh, maybe I can just do this thing and this thing, and then all of a sudden you've discovered a solution. I'm thinking of the barf on the ceiling, but regardless, it was. It's so good because, again, and the world is so fun.
And that's one of the spots I would always get stuck at too. I would remember to turn on his loud music, but I would forget to kick over the speaker to make the barf fall off the ceiling.
Right. Yep. And his signaling is great because you know how it got there, and there's nothing else you can do. So maybe can I push this? Boom. And limited number of verbs gives you a great opportunity to just really experiment without getting lost. It's just a masterpiece. I adore Day of the Tentacle.
Yep.
I have it on multiple systems at this point.
I have Scum VM on so many devices. It's insane. I have it on my Nintendo Wii, my Sony PSP, 2 cell phones, 3 PCs.
That's awesome.
And I carry it. I carry it in my pocket all the time, and people will pull out their phone and they'll be like, check out this game I downloaded. And I'll be like, check out this game I played in 1995 that's on my cell phone.
It's so good. It's so good. It's a special kind of game that doesn't really, they exist. And, like, for example, there are some spiritual successors like Thimbleweed Park, I should say.
Yep.
Great game. I really
Amazing
enjoyed that.
Game.
Great. Such a wonderful throwback by still introducing new things. The story is fantastic, and it ends up in cool places. If you haven't played that, listener, definitely play Thimbleweed Park. It is incredible. It's a really great game. But yeah, Day of the Tentacle, man, same thing. I think I upgraded my CD drives just so I could play it cleaner. I had like a double speed CD-ROM drive on that computer, and I had to upgrade to something else.
Yeah, my 486 came with a 4-speed, so it was just enough.
I had a 2-speed. It was a 2-speed, and it was not enough. I don't know if you mentioned before, like, did you play a lot of Maniac Mansion when you were a kid?
Yes, on the original Nintendo. I didn't play the computer version, but I did play the NES version.
Gotcha. So, of course, Day of the Tentacle was just probably an easy one for you to pick up.
Well, actually, I didn't even realize the two were related.
Oh, interesting.
At first, because I got Day of the Tentacle as part of it used to be called Pace, but I think Pace got bought out by Sam's Club. They had this thing called the Lucasarts Vault, I want to say, and it came with like 5 Lucasarts games. and it was part of that. It was that Sam and Max. Was it Rogue Squadron?
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, Rogue Squadron.
TIE Fighter
Mhm.
and X-Wing.
Cool. That was a good collection.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's real good.
And so I played it based on that. It was just, oh, well, this is the next one in the stack, so I'll go to this.
Sure.
And then got about 10 minutes into it and went, wait a minute.
Hey,
Wait a minute. I know these people.
it's very good. What's your opinion on Day of the Tentacle?
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Even now, when they did the remaster a couple of years ago, going back to that was a real joy because you forget how many clever, weird little things they build into that.
Oh yeah, it's it is a joy. Yeah, I had the same experience. I played on the remaster again, and I was like, oh, just fell right into it again. Just felt good.
Well, and to their credit, they set up trophies for things like putting the hamster in the microwave,
Sure.
playing through the original game in Ed's room.
Oh yeah. Oh, you get a trophy for that. That's cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Neat. Good. That's a nice little reward for you. That's great.
But that game is, again, funny, clever, strange. I feel like what they were doing at Lucasarts at that time period is something that a lot of people have tried to emulate since and haven't been able to do with nearly the success that they had.
Yeah, especially with tone and comedy and creating these kind of humorous worlds where interesting characters can just do funny stuff in, where it feels natural as opposed to jokey. I always gravitate towards games that feel, again, natural instead of jokey. Kind of Earthbound is one of my first things I go to with that. As much as I don't like that game mechanically, it's got this wonderful little surreal, humorous world where interesting characters can do funny things without being jokey, even though there are jokes.
Yes.
I feel like Data Tentacle is a similar thing.
Yeah, well, and it's nice when it's not just a joke for a joke's sake, but that
Sure.
joke also serves the narrative.
Or like a funny, like for example, the talking horse is one of my favorite examples of that. And he's super funny, but he's just talking. It's just a talking horse saying
And I never bother explaining it.
No, never explain it. It's just there in the world, but the world is set up in such a way where there can absolutely be a talking horse who stays at the hotel, and he just happens to have a room perfectly suitable for a horse in the hotel. Yeah, just one of those, again, wonderful things that it just works really well.
Yeah, I was never much into the Doom games or Wolfenstein games, but I was always in love with those games, the
Sure.
LucasArts point and click adventure games.
So let's talk a little bit about Day of the Tentacle,
Yeah.
because I adore that game, and I didn't play a lot of Lucasfilm. Like I didn't
Yeah.
play Sam and Max.
Yeah.
I recently played Grim Fandango, and I can't. The logic in that game is just too much for me. Again, I can't.
Yeah.
My brain isn't logical, I guess, like that to really figure out the puzzles, and
Yeah.
I ended up just reading a walkthrough. And after a while, I'm like, I'm just reading a walkthrough. I can just watch this online. Why am I playing this? So what's the point? If I'm just reading a walkthrough, there's really no point in this process. So, but Day of the Tentacle had none of that. What was your first impressions of Day of the Tentacle? How do you feel about it? Yeah.
It was another, like, just an addition to something that a genre that I love, and then it had the cartoony humor and I don't know, just like everything about it. I immediately was drawn to it. Like it just I didn't even realize right away it was a sequel to Maniac Mansion. That didn't even occur to me until you started, I guess, seeing like some of the same characters in the mansion. And it has
Right.
like this sort of Nickelodeon sort of cartoon style again. You know, they got the graphics, CD-ROM graphics got better at that point, and it was just, I just loved it. I just love the characters, the humor, the puzzles are very fun. They're very jokey. You're rewarded for thinking of absurd answers to some of the puzzles, especially with like trying to find George Washington's teeth and what have you. The time element going back and forth was awesome. There are actually lines of like jokes that I still like repeat to this day unknowingly, like the guy trying to rob, like break into the car outside in the parking lot, like going through the keys. He's like the worst robber ever, and he's going like, which one of these keys is it? Like, why is he saying that out loud? He's supposed to be fooling us, trying to break into that car.
God, that character is great. And his voice. It's got to be one of these.
He's got to be one of these. I think about that a lot. He's trying to get a crowbar, and so you hand him the actual keys, and he gives you the crowbar.
Right. Because he doesn't need that anymore.
No,
so.
And then you come back, and the trunk's open.
Yep.
And the other thing too was to not just inventory puzzles, but you had to talk to people and get information with I guess what's it called? Dialogue trees.
Yeah, dialogue trees.
Dialogue trees.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if you're no stranger to LucasArts, if you already played what was the game? Monkey Island, I think it might have been called. They something Island, Skull Island, maybe. There's a whole series of games that literally it was LucasArts, but everything was a dialogue tree puzzle, and it was so if you're no stranger to that, then they basically did both in Day of the Tentacle, right? They had inventory and the dialogue tree stuff, and you can literally get items and like try to work your conversation and get what you need. I love it. I love that game.
Yeah.
I actually because they re-released it for Steam. It's the same game, but they just made it HD or whatever. And I was just thinking the other day, well, I want to play through that again because like that's a humongous plus. Where like I actually want to watch that game again.
Yeah. I love the puzzles in that too, especially ones that require the world to change with the different time periods.
Yes.
One of the best ones for me is the puzzle where the twins are carving the statue.
Yes.
And it's a bit of a logic leap, but you have to give him a left-handed hammer. And if you give him the left-handed hammer in the colonial times, he can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
He's missing the chisel.
He keeps missing.
He gets upset and his brother takes his place.
Yeah.
Which means the statue is now left-handed instead of right-handed.
Yeah.
Which means when you kick Edna in the present day down the stairs, she can't grab on because she can't grab onto the arm. It is it's one of those puzzles that you feel like a genius when you figure it out. You're like, I am the smartest person alive. It's literally that is like, again, and a lot of this simpler stuff, turning the wine into vinegar and things like that. If you put it in this time capsule,
you have to shrink a sweater, and by putting thousands of quarters in a dryer, so it makes it thousands. That's so funny that no one shut that dryer off.
Funny. Oh,
the world's taken over by tentacle creatures in the future, and I love the tentacle creature design. By the way,
gorgeous. I love them. They're adorable.
They went from they were already great in Maniac Mansion, and then they even made them better in the cartoon version. And they all have voices and stuff. It's so great. And the world's taken over by tentacles. Everything's this metallic sheen, but the laundry room is exactly the same. That's so funny. That's so funny.
Because let's be honest, if you walk by a dryer going, would you turn it off?
No, somebody already got it going. I don't want to mess up their laundry. Brilliant.
Somebody's drying something.
Yeah.
I guess I'm not gonna mess up exactly. It'll get moldy.
And my other personal favorite was you have to get the woman who's designing the American flag. And she's already overworked and annoyed. Apparently, George Washington keeps changing the plans. He's like, just put them over there. Betsy Ross, thank you. Just put them over there. So you give her like a tentacle picture or like a diagram about the tentacle. And she looks at it and goes, all right, I'll get it in. And then so you actually change the American flag to a tentacle flag. Let's make it basically a costume for that character later on. And she has to get to the top to like put it on so she can walk around.
So she can pretend to be a tentacle, because he kind of sort of looks like a tentacle.
And she has to do a beauty contest later. It's so
weird.
Funny.
It's so really, really funny.
Put spaghetti on her.
On spaghetti with meatballs on it, and they keep doing the contest over and over again because, of course, they're waiting for you to win. So it's not like because there's no fail states. So it's like and then they just bring you back. Oh, no,
And the tentacles think so little of humans. They think a skeleton is a human. So you just have to put spaghetti on its head, horse teeth on its face, and they're like, this is the greatest human I've ever seen.
and you can't just put spaghetti on his head. You have to actually twirl it up with a fork.
Yeah.
To make it pretty. Oh, it's so freaking.
And you have to make the like the French poodle human leave because he's like the star of the show. He's great, dude. It's really such
fantastic.
an amazing game. The humor's so great.
And I'm glad you brought up the horse teeth because he might be one of my favorite non-tentacle, non-family characters because he just sits there. And the absurdity of this, the absurdity of the hotel, because it's a hotel now, the mansion, has a room just for a horse.
Yes.
It has a horse room. So, and the horse is just sitting there and he is dry. Hey, how are you? Oh, just a horse. And you can ask him stuff like, why is a horse here? Why wouldn't I be? Just like dry. And again, the object is to get his teeth. It is so freaking good.
Yeah, that video game developer, I forget his name.
Tim Schafer?
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. Yes. In another life, he was probably supposed to write for like Nickelodeon. I think he was supposed to do like, episodes of Rocco or something.
Yeah.
And his sensibilities and sense of humor would have been perfect for that. But instead, he got into LucasArts and made games, and we're all very happy for it.
Yes, we have all benefited from this from his decision.
He would go on to make Grim Fandango. That was his baby too. But that was also the tail end of LucasArts.
I think my favorite puzzle from that was throwing the puke down in front of the perfect human in the human contest to show they sick. Again, there's enough like puzzles and like hints that you have to do that. And just the look on like that perfect human's face when you throw the puke in front of him,
so good.
It's like, God, like what are you people on to produce this stuff?
Do you have any favorite puzzles from that, Jeff? Yeah, or comments? Yeah.
Well, I'll just echo Trevor's comments because I think it was the comedy that sold me on that game, and just to like skip to Grand Fandango where it was like more of like it still had a comedy to it, and it was like he's figuring out the death part of it. But when you were in that game and I tried to replay it myself and I could not get through it, it was something where you could almost build on your failures and you wouldn't know until you screwed something up until like 2-3 steps later, and you'd have to go back and kind of unpeel that, right? Whereas like Day of the Tentacle, I just remember being like just wrapped in that game, and it was just a fun experience versus something that was frustrating or like almost taxing to do. It was more relaxing than something where you really had to, like, you still had to think in that one, but the other games you almost had to like consult a jury on how to get past the logic of this world. So it was one of those games there. It was just a fun game and fun memory of old PC gaming. So
yeah, there's lots of great little memorable characters in Day of the Tentacle. I love not a joke. He was the novelty gift salesman who sells you the the novelty cigar salesman. That was it. Yeah. The exploding cigar. And you can, that whole thing is really fun.
Yeah.
Of course, the founding fathers are great. I mentioned this to my brother, and I say it on multiple interviews, and I try to have to cut it out because I'm like, I can't say the same thing 3 times in the show. But it's a conversation starter, so hopefully it's not too annoying. I love the horse.
Oh yeah.
He might be my favorite. The horse, which again, remember the house is a hotel, which implies that they built a room in the hotel just for a horse. They built a horse room.
That's right. Yeah, I didn't know that.
They built a horse room for him. So it's that they did that on purpose because I guess the horse comes often. And the horse is so dry and just, you say, "Hi there, horse. How you doing?" "Oh, pretty good." And he's just like this driest, least silly voice in that entire game belongs to the horse. Do you have any puzzles that y'all remember fondly from that?
Yeah,
you mentioned the puke from the using the puke to freak out the poodle guy.
The one I thought that was particularly clever or I don't know, maybe I say that because I actually solved it pretty easy. There was you go back in time, and I think there's 2 artists. One's left-handed, one's right-handed. And if you swap the mallet, the hammer, from a left-handed hammer to a right-handed hammer, which alone is like, like that's great.
Ridiculous. Yeah, of course.
That's wonderful. They'll switch the arm from which their sculpture is, which in the future someone grabs onto if you try to kick them down the stairs or like down the hallway.
Yeah.
And like I remember that was one that I very organically solved, and I was just so proud that I got that, because it took forever, and then it happened, and it was hilarious and awesome.
Yeah, you and I have the exact same favorite.
Nice.
I adore that, because just like you said, it's leaps of logic that actually do connect, and you can get there, right? You can say, okay, hammer, he's got a hammer. How do I do this? Left-handed. Oh, what if I just give him this left-handed hammer? And then the reason he messes up because he can't do the carving anymore.
That's right. He takes those big swings and misses.
He takes these giant swings. Oh no, I've lost my muse. And then his brother takes over, and now the sculpture is left-handed instead of right-handed, which means when you go to kick Edna down the stairs, she reaches out to grab the arm. She can't anymore because it's not there, and that's how you get her out of the room. It is such a wonderful series of events and logic, and it's utilizing the concept of time travel, right? I make a change here, it happens here, it causes an effect. I mean, only in that game can you freeze a hamster in an ice chest and go back to it in 1,000 years, whatever it is.
Oh my God. Right.
Honestly, you guys talking about all those puzzles just brings up the memories. Like, because it was such a blur at that time.
Okay,
and
fair.
The mentioning of the hamster and the barf and the switching of the arms. Again, just because I remember sitting with my brother and we were laughing our butts off. And I remember my dad coming in and saying, kind of like in that dad language, like, what's going on in here? Like,
yeah, what are you up to?
Right? Because obviously, like, even with my kids, when they start laughing, like, all right, something's going down, right? Like, they're either too loud or too quiet. There's no in between. So I remember we told him, and we could see a smile in his face, and he wasn't one for gaming too much. So just to even see that off of that game, that was something that was, that I hold in my heart, kind of going forward. That was one of those times where, hey, games can kind of reach across those generations, right? And make people laugh, right? It doesn't always have to be like pew pew, shoot, right? Like it was different. So
yeah, definitely, that's good. One last character, my brother reminded me of him, and I can't believe I forgot the burglar who's trying to break into the car. There's a burglar, and he's got the keys in his hand. No, he's got a crowbar, and he's trying to
crowbar. Yes.
So if you give him the keys, he hands you the crowbar because he doesn't need that anymore. So he hands you the crowbar so you can unearth the chewed gum. And he's playing with these going, which one is it? It's got to be one of these. As if there's like 1,000 things. It's like 4. and he looks at you, the player, as he does it. He's going, it's got to be this one. Got to be one of these. Oh, it's so freaking good. I could talk about Day of the Tentacle all day and probably could.
A gamer,
awesome.
A gamer looks at Day of the Tentacle for 40 more years.
Whether it was Day of the Tentacle or Maniac Mansion or Sam and Max Hits the Road or King's Quest or Zork, before you could even point and click, there was something about this genre that was magical. And as I've been thinking back through these conversations and listening and editing, as I do every night when I do this, I'm struck by the variety of experiences we were able to have with this very simple interface, and how much this interface of point and click opened up a world of stories that just couldn't have been done with traditional platforming or traditional run and gun or puzzle games, right? Again, I love Mega Man, I love Zelda, I love Mario, and they tell some cool stories. But the only place to get these were really RPGs, and there was a barrier of entry to an RPG. The grind, the experience, everything about an RPG isn't accessible to everybody. But anybody can sit down to Maniac Mansion, point at open door, use those verbs and navigate a story and experience a story in a way they may never have done before. It took cartoons and comics and really deep themes and brought them to a medium that was interactive that we could actually play and enjoy. And I think that's why it still resonates with us today. And hopefully it's still resonating with gamers now. Thank you very much for checking out A Gamer Looks at 40. If you haven't done so already, please give the show a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcast of choice. They really help, so please, I would love it if you could do so. Patreon.com/A Gamer Looks at 40 is the ultimate thank you. And if nothing else, follow me on Twitter at A Gamer Looks at 40. I'm also doing weekly Tuesday night streams at 8:30 CST, twitch.tv/A Gamer Looks at 40. The list of things goes on. I love adding to the list because it allows me to connect with you, and hopefully you connect with me, and we build these cool listener podcast relationships. That really is the heart, I think, of the retro gaming community. Thanks again for checking out the show, and I'll see you next time.